chords, we're going to start with G major. In the first 5 chords, we started with E minor, and everything was just to add a finger, move down a finger, and you got 5 complete chords. And to me, in my opinion, that's the 5 easiest chords that you should first teach your student, that you should first learn if you're learning by yourself. The next 5 chords, your fingers have to stretch a bit more, right? So you really want to do some finger stretching exercises. If you check out my previous videos, we talk about the first position exercise. And that just holding the position really helps your fingers move and stretch a lot. All right, let's get into it. So we're going to learn 5 chords now, and it's going to start with G major. So let's do G major. Now, a lot of students I've taught over the decade normally form their chords from the 6th string go down. But the G major chord, it's a lot easier for them to form if they go from the 1st string to come up, right? It's a lot easier for them. So we're going to go from the 1st string, come up. So the 3rd finger, it's on the 1st string and it's on the 3rd fret. So we put our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret on the 1st string. Then we put our 1st finger on the 5th string on the 2nd fret. So that goes right there, make sure, right above the fret. And then our 2nd finger, our middle finger, goes on the 6th string on the 3rd fret. Okay? And that's your G major chord. Let's give it a strum for 4 times. That's your G major chord. From the G major chord, we're going to go to the B7 chord, right? So what we do here, we take off our 2nd finger, we take off our 3rd finger, but we leave our 1st finger where it is. We skip a string and we put our 2nd finger on the 3rd string, and we're on the same fret as the 1st finger. So our 2nd finger goes on the 3rd string on the 2nd fret. So it skips the D string. Likewise, our 3rd finger skips the 2nd string and goes to the 1st string and is again on the 2nd fret. So this chord is, the entire chord is on the 2nd fret, and once you have your 1st finger on the 5th string, 2nd fret, you know you have to skip a string, skip a string. So a lot of my students, we call this the skip chord or the skip chord, and that's how they memorize it. So if I say the B7 chord, they may get a bit confused at first, but if I say the skip chord, they'll know, oh, the chord where we put our 1st finger here and we skip and we skip. So we get the B7 chord, right? And let's give this a strum 4 times. And that's the B7 chord. If your song has a B major or a B minor chord, the B7 is most of the times, or should I say some of the times, is a good enough substitute for your students to play a song that may have that chord in it, right? So let's go to the next chord. So we were on the B7 chord, this is the B7 chord. We're going to go to the A major chord, and this chord is a very easy transition as well. Your 1st finger comes down a string. So it was on the 5th string, and now it comes down to the 4th string. It doesn't change the fret, it's still on the 2nd fret. The 3rd finger comes up a string. So from the 1st string, it comes up to the 2nd string, right? So your 3rd finger is on the 1st string, it comes up to the 2nd string, and all your fingers are still in the 2nd fret. And my students call this the squish chord, because this is the chord where your fingers have to squish together to manage to play the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string. So just like we have the skip chord, which is the B7 chord, the A major chord, if they forget the name A major, if I say the squish chord, they'll know, oh, the chord that we have to squish all our fingers together on the same fret, right? So this is the A major chord. Let's strum it 4 times. That's our A major chord. The next 2 chords are D major and D minor. And in my experience, students have the most trouble grasping these last 2 chords. So we're going to take it slow, and we're going to learn the D minor and the D major chord, right? So I'm currently on my A major chord here. To make D minor, we lift up the 1st finger, and we take our 3rd finger and carry it down a fret. So now we're on the 3rd fret, right? So I'll do that one more time for you. This is the A major chord or the squish chord, and we take off our 1st finger and we carry down our 3rd finger 1 fret. So the 2nd finger was on the 2nd fret on the 2nd string. We carry it down a fret, which means it's now on the 3rd fret on the 2nd string. And of course, if your students get confused, you can just look at the chord chart, and the chord chart will have everything there. So now we have two fingers in place. Our first finger that we took off, we're going to put the first finger on the first string, first fret. So my students get this. If I say put your first finger on the first string on the first fret, they tend to know it's the D minor chord, right? So that's a little trick as well. So I'll do that one more time, and I'll do it a bit faster so you can see the motions of my fingers. So this is the A major chord. I'm going to go to D minor now. I take off my first finger. I slide down my third finger one fret. It's now on the third fret, same string. And I put my first finger on the first string on the first fret. And this is your D minor chord. And just like F major 7, I prefer to strum the D minor chord from the 4th string. So let's give it a strum 4 times. And that's your D minor chord. We've reached our last chord, which is D major, right? So for our D major chord, we take off our second finger. Our second finger's off. We take off our first finger. So our third finger remains. I'm going to do that one more time. We're on the D minor chord. We take off our first finger. We take off our second finger. Put your first finger where your second finger just was, right? So your second finger was just here. You're going to put your first finger there instead, right? I'm going to do that one more time because this is the part where a lot of my students tend to get a little confused. So I'm going to do that one more time. The D minor chord. I take off the first finger, I take off the second finger, and I put my first finger where my second finger just was, which is the 3rd string, 2nd fret. And now I put my second finger, which is my middle finger, on the 1st string on the 2nd fret. So it goes right here, right? So that's the D major chord. Now I'm going to run through the entire transition between D minor and D major so you can get a smooth transition of everything. This is your D minor chord. Take off your first finger, take off your second finger. Put your first finger where the second finger just was. Put your second finger on the 2nd fret on the 1st string. And that's your D major chord. Let's give it a strum 4 times. So just like D minor and F major 7, I strum my D major from the 4th string. In my opinion, that's where it sounds a lot better, right? So if you look at it, and you know, a lot of students prefer this method as well. You have the D minor chord. The only thing you're really doing is carrying down your first finger to the 2nd fret, and you're switching the first and the second finger. So if that works for your students, that's good as well. So you have the D minor chord. You carry down your first finger to the 2nd fret. It puts your hand in this awkward position, and then you switch the 1st and the 2nd finger, and you have that D major chord there.